Opco has been giving me regular email updates along the way, and I know you guys want to know what is happening with BitCrude energy. And so we thought we'd do a little bit of a check-in. This is, again, sort of like a regulatory environment issue, but it sounds like they've got a few things that are showing promise. Andy Popko is director of BitCrude Energy, and Cal Broder is chairman and founder of BitCrude Energy, and they both join me now to give us an update. Thanks so much, guys, for being with us today.
Thanks for having us again, Daniel.
Yeah, thank you.
So let me start with Cal so that people understand. I think, what's quite amazing is the broad level of awareness people have about the different companies, yours being one and Canapux being the other, of transporting bitumen in a solid form and doing it by rail. There's a huge amount, I think, of awareness about it. But let's talk specifically about how you approach it so that people know exactly what it is we're talking about. Go ahead, Cal.
Sure. Well, what we did is we took a slightly different approach. I looked at it a while back, quite a few years ago, and felt that solid was the way to go. So I tried to figure out a way to move it as a solid. And it was complex. It was a very complex issue. We have to first design a diluent recovery unit to extract the diluent. Once the diluent's out, then it's back in its natural state, which is a safe format, or much safer than any other crude oil in the world, for that matter. And then we had to figure out a way to get it into something that we could transport it. And that's where I came up with the idea of a shipping container that we pour it in while it's hot. Because while it's in a diluent recovery unit, it's hot. It's at boiling temperatures, right? So we're 150 degrees in some cases or more. So we're able to utilize the natural tendencies of that bitumen because if you think of the bitumen like butter can be a solid or it can be a liquid. If you put a little bit of heat to it, it becomes a liquid. You cool it off, it becomes a solid. And that's exactly what the characteristics of bitumen are like. And that's what really gave the aha moment for me.
So let me connect a couple things together, because people would say, well, if you can transport it in solid form, why do you need diluent at all? So if I'm understanding how this works, you go to the production facility, mix it with diluent so you can actually move it in a pipeline, and then it comes to your facility, you take the diluent out so it returns to its sort of semi-solid form, and then you transport it from there. Is that what you're describing?
In essence, yes. But what really is the beginning stage is they use the diluent in the extraction of the water from the bitumen. So both the mining and the in situ use a lot of water. And they recycle it. So give them lots of credit. They've changed their focus, and they've really been recycling their water. But what they do is they use water and in some cases a little bit of chemicals to separate the bitumen from the sand. And then now they have a water-bitumen combination. And now they have to treat the bitumen to get the water out. So a lot of people will refer to the process as a water treatment process that produces bitumen. And that's really what it does, is they need the diluent at the first stage to get the water out, but then in order to put it on the pipeline, they need to add more. So they give you rough numbers. When they extract the bitumen or get the bitumen to the surface, which is an emulsion with water, they hit it with about 15% diluent to knock out the water, the pre-treat. And then, in order to put it on the pipeline to get it viscous enough, they have to put another 15 or 20% in. So it's a kind of a combination of reasons. But yes, then it would come to our site, and we would take the diluent back out, and we would send it up.
I think it's important for people. I think it's important for people to understand that, because when the Green Party leader in British Columbia was always talking about why he hated our bitumen so much, diluent was a factor. And so what is it about diluent that causes environmentalists to be so to target oil sands in this particular way? Because if we can solve if we can understand some of the environmental problems solved by that, then we can move on to the next stage and talk about the economics of it. But why? What is the advantage that you offer by not having to then transport it to the end user using with diluent?
And I'll go into that in just a minute, Danielle, but we put a PowerPoint presentation back up on our website for your listeners. I know that most of them are in COVID lockdown, so they might have access to the internet more than they did last time. So we do, on the very first page of our website, www.bitcrude.ca, we have a Daniel Smith presentation. And on page 2, it explains, it's our our toxicity test on our BitCrude. The toxicity of the diluted bitumen and its underlying issues are related to the diluent. It's not the bitumen that is toxic. It's the diluent that they put into it, unfortunately, to make it a liquid. And that's the thing that we have to recognize, is that the diluted bitumen is a manufactured product, right? And so what we've done is we've turned that manufactured product into a new manufactured product, because we manufacture it back into its natural state, or what we call BitCrude, to be the safest crude oil in the world. And so,
and thanks for that, Cal, because I just went online and saw it. It's the safest crude oil to transport. It will not disperse in water, and it is designed to float. And so those are all the reasons why you address a lot of the environmental issues. I want to make sure that I get Andy Popko in, though, as well, Director of BitCrude Energy. Andy, tell like, we've been talking about this now, I don't know, when we first did a show on this, maybe 2 years ago, and I worry about, do you have, are there regulations that are standing in the way? Are you lining up some of the big players to be interested in using your technology? Because there's always these great ideas, and then there's something that prevents them from being widely adopted. Is there any developments happening on that front?
Oh, Danielle, we have a lot of success for BitCrude over the last time we talked, and again, thanks for your continued interest. I don't even know where to start, but as we mentioned, we had our commercial unit running in Lamont here, and the design parameters, we beat them all. There is an oil company major out there that we're working with. Unfortunately, we're under a confidentiality agreement with them and can't mention them, but they know who they are, and we thank them very much. In August of this year, we also demonstrated that we could offload it off a rail car with no bitumen. And again, as Cal mentioned, we can do it off the containers. We are talking this last weekend. We did have a number of investors that came through our process, and they are interested, and they're from the United States and in Canada. We do have a letter of intent from a refinery in India for 120,000 barrels of bitumen, and we're continuing to work with them. Just before Christmas, we sent them 2 5-gallon pails, and just for all your listeners, we sent it by air because it's non-flammable, non-toxic, and doesn't explode. We sent it by air, and they're currently doing the analysis on that. At the same time, we had representatives from China refineries that came through also on the weekend, and they looked at it, and they've just asked now for 4 or 5 gallon pails that they want to send over to their areas. So we're continuing to meet with different investors, different companies, even the Alberta government. Kudos to Minister Wilson, our Minister of Aboriginal Affairs and Indigenous. We're working with him because we believe that the First Nations should play a key role in this as well. And because all the containers need to be bought to move the bitumen that are reusable, recyclable, we are going to work with our First Nation partners in British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan. We do have a lot of letters of intent already from these groups, including the Métis Nation of Alberta. And Minister Wilson, I know, has been very supportive and will continue to be. So, yeah, there's a lot of exciting things going on. And ever since we completed the running of the diluent recovery unit over the last 6 weeks, we're getting a lot more interest in it. And then especially what's happened with XL. I know you've talked a lot about it on your shows, and my heart goes out to all those who have lost jobs, not just in Alberta, but also in the United States. And I know we're going to continue to find a solution to XL, but in the meantime, I believe that BitCrude is that solution to get the economy back going again, and we can reawaken the industry and get investors from home and abroad, and try to maneuver through this fallout of COVID and everything else that we're currently dealing with in the economic depression that we're going through right now.
Let me go back to Cal for one sort of final thought about the economics of it. Cal Broder, chairman and founder of BitCrude Energy, because there's a couple things about removing the diluent that I think is important. It means that you've got a concentrated product. So rather than having, I guess, up to 30% of what goes through the line being something that has to be sent back and can't be sold and can't be used, that goes to the economics of it. I think the other thing that we've talked about before is that this is not subject to the tanker ban in Port au Prince Rupert because it's transmitted in solid form, and so this allows for us to use rail cars to get to a port and then transport it by tanker. Am I summarizing correctly? Is that still what you found as you've gone through this process?
Yeah, we're not using tanker actor, Daniel. We're using container ships.
Oh, container ships, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, our container ships. And the container ships are actually 25% more efficient. So when we look at the Burnaby, when you're looking at economics, one of the things in greenhouse gas, one of the things that we're looking at is that a tanker going out of Burnaby is about 400,000 barrels. Well, we can ship the equivalent of 3 of those those tanker ships on one container ship. So
holy cow!
Holy cow is right. Not to mention, the container ship is 25% more efficient and 25% less greenhouse gas. When we talk greenhouse gas, the most powerful conversation is going to be, once it's in Asia, the greenhouse gas emissions on a barrel of bitumen, or what we call BitCrude, can be reduced by over 50% compared to North America in the refining process. And that's not because they have a more efficient refining process. They have a different product mix. In North America, the bitumen goes into the production of diesel down in the refineries in North America. And we produce high volumes, 94% diesel by volume, which no other crude oil in the world can produce that much. But Asia has a different interest. Asia wants to produce about 50% diesel and 50% asphalt. Well, if you cut off the production of diesel at 50%, your emissions are going to be at least half of what the U.S. or the North American refineries will be, and there's no more processing needed on the asphalt side. It's virtually done.
Amazing.
So when we still look at the amount of diesel coming off of a barrel, it's still going to be 50% of a barrel compared to 12% for WTI, for instance. So I gave a comparison on page 3 that people can look at later, but the pipeline isn't meant for diluted bitumen. It's meant for conventional crude oil, because you have to pay an extra 35% in volume. So for an example, the pipeline to Burnaby is about $7.50 a barrel. The equivalent rate for the bitumen, when you factor in diluent, is about $11.55 a barrel. So pipelines are not the answer for diluted bitumen, but they are the answer for all of our conventional oil in Western Canada.
Holy.
So we have to know what the product is and use a solution applicable to that problem or that issue. And the issue is, Canada has, in Western Canada, Western Sedimentary Basin produces about 1.2 million barrels per day of a conventional type of crude oil. That crude oil would get to Asia at a lot less than the diluted bitumen. And we can move the undiluted bitumen as BitCrude in containers at the same rate. So we get a win-win.
Totally. Win all the way around. Yeah. I guess the only thing I need to do is follow up with the rail companies, make sure that they've got enough capacity in order to meet this demand.
We have checked. Yeah. And right now we know when Canapuck was originally talking about it, they were talking about 10-unit trains a day from Edmonton to the Port of Prince Rupert, for example. So 1 unit train of BitCrude would hold somewhere between 70 to 80,000 barrels a day. So even 4-unit trains a day, that's 320,000 barrels a day. That's 1 every 6 hours. That's an equivalent to a Northern Gateway that was going to move bitumen.
You know what, guys? I am so excited about the progress that you're making. I wish I was going to still be on the air so when this gets fully kicked into high gear. But thank you so much for taking the time to give us an update, and I'll make sure people can go online and look at the PowerPoint.
Thank you very much, Danielle, and all the best to you in your new endeavors. You definitely have been a spokesperson for Albertans, and your passion for the public policy and small business education, for democracy and government. You're going to be missed. You're definitely an influencer in Alberta, so thank you for all you've done. We wish you all the best.
That. Thanks a lot. Cal Broder, Chairman and Founder of BitCrude Energy, Andy Popko, Director